Growing up in Canyon in the 1960s wasn't just a childhood. It was a different ecosystem, a tiny world tucked between redwoods, creeks, and winding roads that felt far removed from the suburban boom happening just a few miles away in Moraga, Orinda, and Walnut Creek. Canyon wasn't near the redwoods, it was inside them. Kids grew up with towering trunks as their backyard walls, the smell of damp duff, creek water, and filtered sunlight that made every afternoon feel like a secret place. The forest wasn't scenery. It was the playground, the clubhouse, the hiding place, the adventure zone. Kids learned early how to read the land, which logs were safe to cross, where the creek deepened, where ladybugs gathered in the summertime. Canyon in the 60s was barely a village, more like a cluster of homes connected by the Redwood Highway and footpaths. Everyone knew everyone, and kids floated freely between houses. Borrowed sugar meant a 20-minute walk through trees. Neighbors doubled as babysitters, mechanics, and storytellers. Adults trusted the land and trusted the kids to roam it. There was a sense of shared stewardship of the forest, of the school, and of each other. The heart of it all was the Canyon School, a small, rustic building deeply woven into the woods. 2 classrooms, a clearing for recess, and a nearby creek. Teachers lived locally and felt like extended family. There were outdoor lessons because the weather and the trees invited it. School events that brought the whole community together. It was the kind of school where you could hear the wind in the branches during math class. The Pinehurst and Redwood roads were narrow, winding, and shaded roads that demanded respect. But for kids riding down steep hills, it felt like flying, and hitching a ride into Moraga or Oakland felt like you were stepping into the big world. Cars were few. Traffic was light, and the land felt like it belonged to the children as much as to the adults. Canyon had its own soundscape, the creek running after winter storms, winding through the redwoods like a distant ocean. The occasional rumble of a car climbing the grade, laughter echoing through the trees, radios playing KYA or KFRC drifting from open windows. It was quiet, but never silent. Canyon always had a reputation for being a little different, artistic, independent, self-reliant. In the 60s, most homes were rustic or hand-built, people heated with wood. Gardens and chickens were common. The community leaned toward the creative and unconventional. It wasn't suburbia. It wasn't rural farmland. It was its own pocket universe. Growing up in Canyon in the 60s meant freedom without fear, nature as a constant companion, a childhood shaped by land, not screens, a community that felt like an extended family, a sense of being slightly outside time. It was the kind of childhood that leaves a permanent imprint. The smell of redwoods, the sound of the creek, the feeling of being held by a landscape that was both wild and gentle. Ending with a single summer day in Canyon, 1965, first person. I woke up to the sound of the creek before I even opened my eyes. It was louder in summer, thinner but quicker, slipping over the rocks like it had somewhere to be. The air coming through the screen smelled of redwood bark warming in the early sun, and the house still held the coolness of the night. Somewhere outside, a stellar jay was already complaining about something. I pulled on yesterday's jeans, stiff from drying on the line, and stepped onto the porch. The boards were cold under my feet. Sunlight filtered through the trees in long, slanted beams, catching dust motes that floated like tiny insects. Canyon mornings always felt like the world was still deciding whether to wake up. Mom was already in the kitchen, radio low, coffee percolating. She handed me a slice of toast without looking up, the way she always did on summer days when she knew I wouldn't be around long. "Be back by lunch," she said, which in Canyon meant whenever the sun was straight overhead. I grabbed my bike, the old one with the crooked handlebars, and coasted down the driveway across 2 wooden bridges made from old railroad ties to the Redwood Highway, which was the main route to Pinehurst Road. The road curved like it was trying to hide from the rest of the world. Riding it felt like slipping into a secret corridor. The air was cool and smelled faintly of eucalyptus from somewhere down the canyon. I met up with Amy, Tara, and Diana near the suspension bridge. We didn't plan it. Kids in Canyon just found each other. Someone had brought bucket for agates. Someone else had a pocket knife. I had a peanut butter sandwich wrapped in wax paper. That was enough to count as a plan. We followed the creek upstream, hopping rocks, balancing on logs, daring each other to cross the deeper pools. The water was icy even in July, and when I slipped in up to my knees, the shock made me yelp loud enough to scatter a pair of quail from the brush. My friends laughed until they fell over. By late morning, the sun had burned through the canopy in patches. turning the forest floor into a quilt of light and shadow. We built a fort out of fallen branches, not the first, not the last, and argued about whether it needed a lookout post. Every so often, a car would groan its way up Pinehurst, the sound muffled by trees, reminding us that somewhere beyond the ridge, people lived normal suburban lives. We didn't think much about them. Around noon, I headed home, often having to push my one-speed bike up the steep grades from the canyon floor. Mom had left a plate of sliced pears on the table, and I ate them standing up, juice dripping down my wrist. The house was quiet except for the radio playing something from KGO, the announcer's voice fading in and out like he was broadcasting from another planet. After lunch, I wandered back outside. The afternoon had that canyon stillness, not silence, but a kind of hush where every sound felt important. A woodpecker tapping, the creek murmuring, someone chopping wood a few houses away. Even the breeze seemed to move carefully. I spent the afternoon lying on my back in the clearing behind our house, watching the tops of the redwoods sway. They moved slowly, like they were breathing. I remember thinking that the trees had seen everything, storms, fires, families coming and going, and that they'd still be there long after I was grown. As the light softened, neighbors drifted onto porches. Someone's dad tuned a guitar. Kids chased each other barefoot across the road. The smell of dinner, onions, garlic, something frying, floated between houses. Canyon evenings always felt like the whole community exhaled at once. When the first stars appeared, Mom called me in. The door creaked the same way it always did. The creek kept talking in the dark. And as I lay in bed, listening to the night settle around the house, I felt that canyon kind of tired, the kind that comes from climbing, running, imagining, and belonging to a place that felt like its own small universe. I didn't know it then, but those days were stitching themselves into me for good. Written and produced by Juanita and Mark Harrigan with help from OutMS AI Copilot. Photos and video from the producers, Eugene Beecher, The Canyon Book by John Vander Zee, and the members of the 68024 Corridor History Facebook group. Thank you for watching.